I want to move quickly and straight through this because we've got a lot to talk about. I'll throw up the list of the top 10 players who gained the most market value in this market value update. There are some players there who we did speak about recently on the show. We had you on the show. We talked about Pavlovic, who's top with plus 15, alongside Diomande plus 15, RB Leipzig, Manzambe, the Freiburg midfielder. He's also plus 15. We talked about all three of those players. We talked about Samuel Inácio, the Borussia Dortmund player, who's plus 12. But there's other names on that list that I think we should maybe touch on. One who I find really interesting is Kaisu Sano, the defensive midfielder at Mainz, who's seen his market value increase by 15 million euros to 40 million euros. What have you made of him? And what I think, if I'm not mistaken, was his debut season in the Bundesliga.
No, it's the second season in the Bundesliga, but he would develop to a real class defensive midfielder. As you said, he's a powerhouse on the field, going into every duel and winning it most likely. He's he's a real machine as you want him to be as a defensive midfielder. And I guess there are a lot of teams who want him because also stats wise, I guess also every team who have like these scouting tools which have the most impact on the transfer strategy. I guess when you search for a defensive midfielder, when I look at Brentford, Brighton, anything like that, then he will be on top of the list surely. So but I think also in the Bundesliga, Dortmund um, should be interested. Maybe they are in the summer. We will see. Also Leipzig, for example. So also in Germany, there would be a lot of interest for him, and he's a top player in defensive midfield, like a warrior. So yeah, it's a big step. I know. Also, maybe a lot of people from outside of Germany looking for a Mainz player of 40 million looks maybe kind of high. But I think when you see him play, you know exactly why he's on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. A very impressive player to keep an eye on. Excuse me. Another midfielder who's on this list, who people may know because of his second name, is of course Job Bellingham. He's ninth on the list. His market value has increased by 10 million euros to 40 million euros. Toby, I think a lot of people obviously knew that Joe Bellingham moved to Dortmund, and perhaps haven't heard much of him since then. He's had maybe a slow start at Dortmund. Obviously, he's constantly compared to his brother. But in a sense, maybe it's had a very similar journey because obviously it's easy to forget, but Jude Bellingham had to work very hard and it took time for him to get into the first team at Dortmund. But Job has slowly but surely worked his way into Niko Kovac's first 11. And that, I'm assuming, explains why his market value is now beginning to rise.
Yeah, I think the comparison with his brothers are not good for him because they are also totally different players. As Jude always was like thriving to um, in offensive ways, scoring goals, everything like that, being a threat in front of the goal. But Job is more like a holding midfielder, like more like a real number 8, maybe number 6. But he really, developed good in the last months. So he's also a starter for Dortmund, and I think also with the comparison to his brother, I think these comparisons are not good because they expect more of him than he can show, and he needs to show like he did, or he reached the next step for him. And yeah, when we see his profile of a player and cut the name Bellingham out, I think he would be seen better as a player. But he's also captain of the under 21s of England, and he's a starter at Dortmund. So the market value rise is the next step, and I think it could be even more in the next month or next season.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what he could achieve next season after now nailing down that starting position for Dortmund. Another young player who I think we should touch on is a German. I was going to say German international, but I think if I'm not mistaken, he won't be at the World Cup, and that is Said El Mala, who has done very, very well for FC Cologne this season, and his market value has increased to 45 million euros. Toby, he's been linked with a number of clubs. I think Brighton are perhaps the most obvious one in the UK, but I think we might see a number of big clubs take a look at him this summer, even if he isn't going to the World Cup.
Yeah, he isn't going to the World Cup, and I think that's the one of the most disappointing um, things German fans seen in the squad, because I guess everyone wanted him in the squad instead of Leroy Sané. But yeah, Julian Nagelsmann thinks different about it. But yeah, he's phenomenal. It's his first season in the Bundesliga, and he's the player you want to see. He's going into one-on-ones the whole game. Has a great shooting technique, so he scores wonder goals. He just has flair, like you say, for a winger, and you really like to see him play. And yeah, you said it. Brighton is really interested. Brentford, but honestly, I think he has the talent, and also his season was that good that he should be on a bigger club next season. So that's my opinion on that. And I can imagine that if he waits for July, maybe first week of August, then when the other transfers are rolling and all stone comes together, then I think yeah, he can be on an even better team or a bigger team. And then when you see him at a big team, I think also the fans will love him, and then his market value could rise even higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, we don't really have to spend too much time on him because everyone knows who he is. Everyone watched him perform so well in the Champions League this season. But Michael Olise gets the increase to 150 million euros. He gets a 10 million pound increase, 10 million euro increase, apologies. And yeah, now 150 million euro player, Toby.
Yeah, he will be on the top 5 of the world after all updates now. Also after the other leagues. But I think he also showed it, like he has Ballon d'Or potential this summer. Also, when he will, I think we can assume that he will have a good World Cup with France. And yeah, he also showed on the biggest stage, like with Paris game, with the Real Madrid game. So yeah, he's on the or he's one of the best players in the world, and this new market value showed that also.